Have you ever wondered why you make the choices you do each day? Each decision, from the mundane to the monumental, from what to eat for breakfast to where to invest your savings, shapes the course of our lives. These everyday choices, as trivial as they may seem, are the building blocks of our existence. Now, what if I told you that there are psychological principles that guide these choices? Intriguing, isn't it? These principles are like invisible strings, subtly pulling us in one direction or another. They influence our preferences, our actions, and ultimately, our decisions. But don't fret. Understanding these principles isn't a Herculean task. In fact, it can be quite enlightening. It can give us a glimpse into the workings of our own minds, empowering us to make better, more informed decisions. Let's delve deeper into the psychology behind our everyday choices through a fascinating case study. Consider the famous jam experiment conducted by psychologists Sheena Iyengar and Mark Lepper. This groundbreaking study aimed to explore the psychology behind our everyday choices. Picture this, a bustling supermarket where amidst the hustle and bustle, a stand filled with jars of gourmet jam catches your eye. In one scenario, the stand boasts an impressive array of 24 different varieties of jam. Everything from strawberry to apricot, blueberry to blackcurrant, enticing you with a plethora of choices. In the second scenario, the same stand is there, but this time with a more modest selection of just 6 varieties of jam. The question Iyengar and Lepper set out to answer was simple. When presented with these two scenarios, from which stand are you more likely to buy a jar of jam? The results were, to say the least, intriguing. You'd think that the stand with more options would attract more sales. After all, more choice is better, right? Well, as it turns out, that's not exactly the case. When the stand displayed 24 varieties of jam, it drew more passers-by, sure, but when it came to making a purchase, only 3% of those people bought a jar. However, when the stand displayed just 6 varieties, 30% of people ended up buying. This brings us to a fascinating concept: choice overload. It's the idea that while we think we want more options, too many choices can actually overwhelm us and lead to decision paralysis. The jam experiment beautifully illustrates this phenomenon. When faced with a multitude of options, we tend to feel overwhelmed, and instead of making a choice, we often choose not to choose. On the other hand, when the choices are limited, it's easier for us to compare, decide, and ultimately make a purchase. The reduction in options eliminates the stress of having to make a perfect choice, leading to a more satisfying decision-making experience. So, what can we take away from the jam experiment? The jam experiment illustrates a key psychological principle: choice overload. Have you ever found yourself in the supermarket, standing in front of an aisle filled with different brands of the same product, unable to decide which one to pick? Or maybe you've spent hours scrolling through a streaming platform trying to choose a movie to watch, only to end up not watching anything at all. This is what we call choice overload. It's a paradox, really. We believe having more options gives us freedom, but what it often does is lead to indecision and lower satisfaction. The more options we have, the more we struggle to make a choice, and the less satisfied we are with the choice we eventually make. Understanding choice overload can help us make better decisions in our everyday life. We can start by limiting our options, focusing on what truly matters to us, and not getting swept up in the sea of choices. Next time you're faced with a myriad of options, remember the jam experiment. It might just help you make a more satisfying choice. Everyday choices may seem trivial, but they hold a lot of power. We've delved into the potency of these decisions, explored the jam experiment, and tried to comprehend our choices. The takeaway? Our choices, no matter how small, are shaped by complex psychological processes. By understanding these, we can navigate our decision-making with greater awareness. More conscious choices can lead to more satisfying outcomes. Remember, understanding the psychology behind your choices can lead to more satisfying decisions, so choose wisely.